Hi, I'm Aedy. I'm a documentary filmmaker and the co-founder of Earthrise, and I'm here with the incredible Daze Aghaji, who is offensively young for everything that she's achieved. She's an incredible climate justice activist and now also the creative director at Earthrise. Hi, love.
Hiya.
How's it going?
Yeah, it's good. It's good. How are you?
Really well. So we're going to talk today about eco-anxiety. We're going to try and make it not an incredibly depressing conversation, but it is a serious topic and it's something that more and more people are really concerned about. More than half of young people are experiencing eco-anxiety. So firstly, before we get there, tell me a little bit about you and why climate activism?
So, me. Yeah, I'm Daze Aghaji. I'm 21.
Just give us your life story, come on.
Yeah, I'm a climate justice activist, and I think it wasn't really a choice. It was one of those things that you accidentally stumble yourself into, and then you're like, oh God, I'm here. And
here we go.
Yeah, exactly. So, I've always felt quite deeply connected to nature, but not really for a particular reason. And I think that connection lives in all of us. And then when I learned about climate crisis and air pollution specifically in London, the angle of social justice came in, of where I realised that the climate crisis affects the most vulnerable within society and the most marginalised, and how can I do anything to make sure that's not the case? And that's kind of where that weird activism thing started. Through many years, actually, after many years of experiencing climate anxiety myself and climate despair, I kind of found agency within my action. And then I've been doing lots of different things, whether it's, doing grassroots organising or, literally running as a political candidate, which is what I'm best known for, right round to suing the government. So it's taken many different means to get here.
She's 21, by the way. You've already run for European Parliament.
Yeah,
which is
being the youngest person to do so. So
you've been doing this for a few years, and as you say, this is not just a kind of environment and nature problem, and I think lots of people still see it that way, don't they? That this is happening to nature as if somehow we are separate to nature. But it's also an issue of human rights and social justice. So you did mention it there, but can you take me more into detail exactly what that means? What do we mean by climate justice, and what do we mean when we say it's a social justice issue?
Yeah, so I think the big thing is recognising that all the issues that we face are deeply interlinked with one another.
Right.
And the way that I see it is essentially if we start looking at the roots of the climate crisis, we're linked back to colonialism, and we're linked back into the way that we treat one another.
Right.
This is when we learn how to extract, we learn how to use and abuse one another. And we took the same energy to the earth, but instead the earth saying, I'm going to kick you out like you're bad tenants. And that's what's happening with climate change. So climate change is merely a side effect of all the social ills that we face. And the only way we can truly solve climate change is by addressing these social justice issues.
Where are we at with the climate crisis? I mean, how bad is it? Is having eco-anxiety a rational response to what's happening in the world right now?
Yes. I think sometimes when we talk about eco-anxiety, especially as, being part of the snowflake generation, people just think we're being butthurt because life's always hard. But I think the idea of the world that you knew it not being the same is definitely something to have anxiety over. And anxiety that's precisely aligned with basically the loss of our natural environment as we know it.
Well, we have never, as a society, ever historically reckoned with something as big and as existential as the very earth that we're on being so threatened. What is it that people are feeling? I mean, I know we've spoken before, we definitely both have experienced eco-anxiety. I mean, how would you describe it in terms of your personal experience?
Yeah, I would say it's really deeply overwhelming feeling. I think of many different parts. I think the first thing that hit me, especially when I was given the time to kind of grieve it, was the loss. Because it was the loss of what, I came into this in uni, I thought I was going to be a historian for the rest of my life. So it's this deep loss of the world.
You still could be.
I know, fingers crossed. But it's this deep loss of the world that I thought I would live within, the place that I thought I would do, but then also a deep loss of something that all of us, as I said before, are deeply connected to, which is our environment, our home, you know. And I think if we link it to, like, you know, people who've been displaced through, you know, like, for example, through the refugee crisis, I think it's very similar in the we are being displaced from our home, you know. And I think that's kind of where this distress and anxiety comes from, mostly being like quite largely within young people is where the large issue around climate change and climate anxiety is happening.
Why do you think it's young people who seem to be disproportionately experiencing this? Is it because they're disproportionately engaged in the issue? Is it a fear of the future? Like, why is this an issue that people are accusing of the snowflake generation?
Yeah, I think both of those examples are exactly why I helped Psych Declare, which is a group that basically focuses on psychiatry and declaration of climate emergency.
Just add that to your list of accolades.
I helped them get the Royal College of Psychiatry to recognise eco-anxiety as basically something that's actually happening this year, and I spoke at their congress as well. And through the research that we did with young people, it was definitely this feeling of, one, young people are extremely clued up about the climate crisis. I know young people as young as 5 they know what's happening. Some of them are even able to give you statistics about what's happening, which are actually quite scary statistics.
Right.
So they are very much facing this issue, but without much support. And then moving forward, it is that kind of loss of what they thought that they would be in their future, and this lack of agency that young people have within the society that doesn't help the anxiety to like be relieved. Because I know from my own personal experience, like I was suffering through depression that was linked to basically climate and like my feeling of hopelessness within the system. And I know that when I started grassroots organising was when things changed for me. It was when I started to feel my own agency and acknowledging it, and that brought me out of a very dark place. And I feel like within society, young people aren't given the chance to do that a lot of the time, aren't being told that their opinions hold value, and aren't being given the opportunities to really inspire their own action.
You have actually played an important role in getting eco-anxiety to be put on the map. It is increasingly being recognised as something really substantial and real. Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, so I remember when I got a very odd email from a friend basically saying, "Have you ever experienced climate anxiety? Well, I've got something for you."
And you're like,
yeah. I was like, yeah, I have. And then I got linked into this group called Psych Declares, and they're a group of really amazing, basically activist psychiatrists and psychologists who work to get their own like sector of industry to recognise climate disaster, but then also things that are like linked into that, like climate anxiety. They focus mainly on getting different, basically like big member groups to declare climate emergency.
Okay.
And in turn, that obviously will affect the like you would hope it would affect the internal like operations of making sure we prioritise environment within everything that we do, and so and such.
Also, it's a shift in society and popular culture
Exactly.
and an increasing awareness of the situation.
Exactly, definitely. So this body of work mainly focused on how climate distress / climate anxiety affects young people.
Okay.
And like the age range was quite vast of young people, basically from like really, really young. Like I think the youngest was around 5, right up to people in their 20s. So it kind of covered a really large amount of people who basically spoke to us about how climate anxiety affects them. I think the real eye-opener was, one, let's not make children seem like they don't know what's happening. They are fully aware. They are. I think they are more like aware to the issues than most adults actually. But sadly, like within the society, they're not given the tools to be able to showcase this. They're not given the tools to be able to discuss this. They're not given the tools to be able to find agency within themselves. I'm like I think part of my activism is, you know, getting youth to be able to have the voice that they deserve. And I think this youth, I'm not just talking about from 18 or from 16, I'm talking about young people
with moral authority.
Exactly, because there is so much power like in children.
You mentioned the word resilience earlier.
Yeah.
And I just want you to tell me a little more about that, because I think resilience was at the heart of your work with an XR, but also in general, I think is really at the heart of all your work and the way that you live, and, you know, having boundaries, knowing when to step back or to contribute. And I'm learning you're very good at self-care.
Thank you. I try. It's a learning process all the time. I think that's the thing. It's like it's never about, you don't end up in this end goal of like enlightenment and then you're there. It's definitely a learning process of where we will continue to mess up on the way, and we will end up like, you know, finding ways to basically, like, the idea is essentially within this movement we need everyone. And what can we do to make sure everyone can show up in the best ways that they can is we can make sure that we help people take care of themselves. And also we all have the responsibility to take care of ourselves. Right. It's all about working within our own capacity, and everyone's capacity is different. Like, you know, I'm like, I'm going to attend one protest and I'm going to do this. Not everyone's capacity can do that, and that's okay. And it's all about us basically seeing this movement as a big machine piece, and then lots of us are little clogs within it, and all of us, we need all clogs to make it work, but some are bigger than others, and that's okay, you know. And I think that's how we need to start seeing it. We need to start being able to know that the responsibility of like solving the climate crisis is not on any one of our shoulders, and the best thing we can do is make sure that we can show up in a whole way, make sure that we prioritize our health and well-being in doing that. And then when we take action, this means that this action is going to be really strong, and I'll rather take less action and stronger quality action than take lots of action and then end up burning ourselves out, since that's something that's really big in the environmental activism space, and it's something that we end up losing a lot of activists to burn out, and this is something we should avoid at all cost.
Yeah, it's kind of a lifelong commitment, right? And you can't, I think if you do just get involved and burn yourself out and don't have the means to look after yourself, you're going to last 6 months to a year. And I think the most powerful thing maybe we've both learned is you have to join a collective, because it is a massive weight on your shoulders. And I think for anyone, any young person who is experiencing eco-anxiety, I completely resonate with the sense that it's like, how am I going to make a difference? And you have these feelings of guilt and hypocrisy because we're all complicit in this system. We want the system to be different, but we don't know how to make the right choices. Everywhere you turn, it's like you think one brand is right or doing things more sustainably or more ethically, and then you hear that, you know, it's completely overwhelming. Exactly. But if you join a group, it really helps. Okay, so let's imagine you have a total cynic in front of you and they say, I don't believe eco-anxiety is reality. How ridiculous, you young snowflakes. What would you say to the cynics about why eco-anxiety is a completely rational response to what's happening in the world right now?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think I would hopefully tap into their empathy, because I'm pretty sure if I take you on, you know, a guided tour in your mind about you losing your home, you watching the bricks on your home slowly erode and knowing that there's nothing else to save you, a feeling of hopelessness, despair and anxiety to know that there is no other place you can go would suddenly come up. And then imagine that on a larger scale, where that house and those bricks are actually your world, your biodiversity, you know, like this is how big it is. And I don't think that, you know, eco-anxiety is irrational. I think it's rational, and I think it shows that, you know, especially with young people who have grown up in a world of where we've been allowed to feel our emotions, we aren't emotionally constipated. You know, we have like a vast majority of young people do have quite high levels of emotional literacy, you know, and it's like, I know why people, and the fact that we are anxious about the environment is very much a rational thing, and it's a human thing, and it's showing that we are working properly.
Yeah, and also I would go, I mean, it's really important. And so, you know, it's not an easy thing to experience, and anyone who's going through it, you know, I completely get it, and I've been there. But in a way, it's an important part of the process, because it means you're engaging emotionally with this issue, and that's been massively lacking. People have been, I think, engaging
headspace, 1.5
from
degrees.
the head, not the heart. With exactly, numbers, statistics. It feels completely intangible. But the moment you engage emotionally with the consequences of what we're talking about, with what people are going to experience and are already experiencing as an everyday reality, to drop in emotionally is really important. And maybe that's the power of young people, and that's the power of young people out in the street right now, is that they're actually feeling it in a way that older generations just aren't engaging.
Exactly. And I think especially, to bring this to a place of hope, so I always think about the fact that, like, since I'm 21, I've actually not lived in a world of a stable climate. So it's crazy. But
in fact, we've done more damage in your 21 years of life than in any generations or centuries before, which is crazy.
Exactly. So it's like, but then I have still had immense levels of joy within this world.
Yeah.
And I've had it when it's bad. So it's like, what about when it's good? What about when we solve this? What about when we have equality within society? What about when we learn how to care and love each other rather than abuse each other?
There's so much to fight for.
I know there is so much, and I think that's the taking that I have whenever I have moments of deep anxiety. I basically say, this is when it's bad, and I can, pinpoint moments of joy that I've had over the last year, over the last 5 weeks, over my life, and just know that, like, it's gonna get better as long as we all put our hearts and minds into this.
There's so much to fight for, and there's so much opportunity, right? And I think it comes back to this dystopia thing in terms of the storytelling. We focus so much on the devastation, we focus so much on the sacrifices that we all have to make. We don't spend enough time talking about the opportunity to build something better, fairer,
and even
like
the word sacrifice, it's like, it kind of implies that, like, sacrifice is bad, and I personally don't think it is, and I think we need to reframe that. So for example, like, even in this society, like, when we're living good, we are sacrificing our mental health, we are sacrificing our bodies, we are sacrificing the time that we have to spend with our family. But what happens when we change the system, live a bit more simply, live a bit more closer to the earth? What will we be sacrificing for bits of the society that we currently have now that we don't like? What will we be gaining? We'll be gaining well-being, we'll be gaining community, we'll be gaining, like, a society that actually cares, and doesn't allow anyone to slip through the net of support. That's what we'll be gaining. And I think, we should start seeing, like, the word sacrifice as not just about letting go and, like, everything being taken from us, but about, less is more, and, like, maybe the sacrifice of saying, actually, I don't agree with the system, and I'm giving it back to whoever created this, and we are taking back, power over our systems that will be able to be in line with the core principles and values of what we hold as humans.
And there's nothing more empowering, really, than trying to play your role in building that new world, building that new value system, and contributing to this incredibly urgent paradigm shift that needs to happen.
Exactly.
For anybody watching, what would be your one piece of advice or takeaway?
So, I think it's the intention of actions, and I'm going to explain why that's so important.
The intention of actions.
Yes, exactly. So in everyday life, we all take actions, and I'm not talking about, like, actions like activist actions, but I'm talking about, like,
don't have to chain yourself to anything or glue yourself to anything.
You're like, I do not endorse, but if you would like to, I can show you how.
But it's got super glue in her back pocket. Don't touch anything.
So it's the idea of, like, these intentions. So in every actions we do, we have intentions behind them. And a lot of the time within larger society, the intentions aren't very pure, whether it's to make money, whether it's to gain land, property, followers, the intentions aren't pure. But what I would say is, within everything that we do, we have to make sure our intentions are positive, and they are based out of a place of love, care and duty to one another and to ourselves and to our planet. And I ask everyone to do that. And I think for me, that's something that I use very much to lull my eco-anxiety, because I know that I'm doing the best I can. I know that I'm doing it from a place of love and deep care. And hopefully my actions show that. And imagine if everyone's action was based out of love and care. Would we see people allowing, like, oil companies to pollute vast areas of our world? Would we see ecocide happen? Would we see corruption? Would we see, racial injustice? We wouldn't, because that's not based in deep care and love. So I that's why I ask for everyone. I ask everyone, like, think about the intentions of your actions and make sure that they're based out of things that we care about and that are really deeply human.
Love, care and duty.
Yeah.
Love that. Thank you.
Thank you.